When I was only 3 years old, I loved to be outside. I wanted to start exploring at an early age. We lived on a block between three different properties surrounding us. We lived out of town, so it was paddocks, creeks, and bushland all around. Now, this particular story I don't quite remember as I was very young. My parents had reminded me of this story a lot. I could remember bits and pieces, but my parents would fill in the gaps. One afternoon, my sister and I were playing outside, but being me, I had a mind of my own, and going wandering was what I did best. At this point in time, I only had an older sister, as Mum was pregnant with my younger brother. It was a weekend because my dad was home and he wasn't working on this day. I'm not sure how I did it, but I got out into the paddock next door, and the paddock has a creek that runs around our block of land and out through the paddocks on the other side. In the paddocks most of the time there were cows and sometimes horses, but at this point in time there were no livestock kept on the property. The grass throughout the paddocks were about 2 feet tall, quite tall enough for a little toddler to hide in. Now at the back of my dad's shed, just on the other side of the fence, was a cow bridge that crossed the creek. It was made of wood. It was made for the cows to cross from one side of the creek to the other. I crossed the bridge and went into the paddock on the other side of the creek, and I ran through the grass. All I know is I had run pretty far out because there were hundreds of acres of land. I made a trail through the grass, and I had made it all the way to the other side of the paddock at the end of the fence line. Apparently by the time I got over there was when my mum and dad had started looking for me and calling out to me. I didn't hear them because I was so far away and so far into the grass. Any sound from far away would have been deadened by the long grass as I was so short. My mum apparently spotted me walking through the grass. She could see my head bobbing up and down with a red hat on. They ran over to where I was. My dad picked me up in my red hat and blue gumboots and carried me back home, with my mum walking beside. I must say though, that wasn't my last adventure. One morning, it was during the week, and my mum was doing the laundry. I wasn't that much older than what I was from the last adventure. My dad was at work, so it was just me, Mum, my sister, and my pop. My pop was my great-grandfather, who lived with us in the back room of the house. Once again, bits and pieces of this story I don't quite remember, but I remember this story a lot more than the last. I was outside playing with my sister in the garden while my mum was hanging out the washing on the line, and me being me, I decided to do my own thing. I had got through the fence at the side of the house again and started running up the paddock, but staying on this side of the creek. I just ran straight forward. This time the grass was a little shorter and greener than last time because it had been slashed a month prior, but I was still small enough to hide in the grass, even though I was wearing that red hat and blue gumboots again. By the time I got to the dirt driveway that splits this property and the next property, I could hear my mum screaming out to me to come back. But I didn't listen, and I climbed through the fences and I ran up the hill that was in front of me. On top of this hill was my neighbour's house. You could see their house from our house. It was very picturesque, so I was always curious about going there. I had got to the front veranda of the neighbour's house when the old lady named Val came out and found me sitting on her step. She was very surprised with my visit. She knew who I was, and she ducked into the kitchen and got me some lollies and some orange juice. She sat with me on the step while I was eating the treats. We could see my pop walking up the paddock at first, and then taking the road for the rest of the way to come and retrieve me. My pop took me home and told me I was in big trouble, and he wasn't wrong. My mum was very upset, but she was glad I wasn't hurt. My dad ended up putting up a play fence around a smaller section of the backyard, so I couldn't escape while being outside. I never escaped again after that adventure.